I'm Megan DeFord.
And I'm Richard Talafera.
We're both coaches, and we're teaming up to have the kind of conversations we have with our clients. The sometimes messy, always meaningful, what now questions we all face.
In each episode, we'll take on a question or challenge about work, purpose, and all the spaces in between.
Think of it like the show Frasier, but with less neuroses and more real-world coaching.
So let's dive in.
Richard, today we are talking about friction and why resistance might be the whole point, right?
Right.
And one of the things I heard this in preparing for this, I was listening to the TED Radio Hour podcast on friction, but they started out by talking about shoes, really. So like basketball shoes, you hear the squeaking on the floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's friction that you need to pivot and to move. And it's also the friction that wears down the rubber on the soles. And when you think about skates reduce the friction on ice and allow you to do the things that you need to do on the ice. But without any friction, you wobble. So it's the right amount of friction that's going to help you do something that you're trying to do, but it has to be like the right amount. And when we were brainstorming this idea, to no one's surprise, as we're both runners, but you brought up running. So talk about that a little bit.
There's a great book by the name of Once a Runner, and it's by John L. Parker Jr. And there's this wonderful quote in there, and I think that speaks to this. And he says, what was the secret? They wanted to know in 1,000 different ways. They wanted to know the secret. And not one of them was prepared, truly prepared to believe that it had not so much to do with chemicals and zippy mental tricks as it was with that most unprofound and sometimes heart-rending process of removing, molecule by molecule, the very tough rubber that comprised the bottoms of their training shoes. The trial of miles of trials. How could they be expected to understand that? And in that quote, he talks about friction and us wanting to take shortcuts to get to a faster mile or a faster PR or the promotion at work, for example. But sometimes it's the process of just getting out there early in the morning when everybody's still asleep and there's still frost or dew on the ground, and getting out there and just doing those miles is really where the magic of running is. And sometimes, we want to skip that discomfort and just go straight to our goal. One of the things that I think we often consider when it comes to friction is that discomfort isn't always a red flag, right? And it's about growth, right? And it also, to me, brings to mind David Goggins, the ultra marathoner, the SEAL, the stay hard guy. You see on social media. And he always loves to say that without friction, there is no growth, right?
That friction you're encountering, instead of seeing it as discomfort, and sometimes it is like very physical discomfort, right? Yeah. But when you're encountering that discomfort, instead of looking at it as a red flag, like you said, look at it as, oh, this is growth. I am getting better. And I think one of the challenges, like you said, we live in this society, at least in the US, where we are trying to make everything frictionless and in a variety of aspects of our lives. But if we can sort of reframe this idea of discomfort as something we need to remove and actually something we need to lean into. And I think, and I will speak for myself and I will speak for clients that I've had, and I don't know where this came from, so I'd love your thoughts on this. But like when we start something and we're really excited about it, right? There's always this underlying feeling that like, we must be good at it because we want to do it. And then you start, you're like, I suck at this, or this is hard, right? And that's when people meet the friction and fall off. They feel like, oh, this is discomfort. I don't want to do this. I must be bad at it, versus looking at it as like, this is an opportunity for growth. And how do I move through it. So that first instinct of like, how do I make this stop? Maybe what we
Mhm.
should be asking is like, how is this preparing me for that growth?
Right. Brene Brown has this great idea of FFT, the freaking first time. She didn't use the word freaking, but you can probably fill in the gaps there. But whenever we do something for the first time, there's this excitement about it. It's new, it's novel, haven't done before, it's gonna be great until we start meeting some friction. And we think, okay, wait, what's happening here? I thought this was supposed to be easy and it's not. And the first inclination is to bail out. This is not comfortable. I look embarrassed. I feel vulnerable. I don't want to feel this way. I need to get out. And rather than see it in from that perspective, look at these things from the perspective of curiosity. What could happen here? And go in that direction and just see what happens.
The other thing about embarrassment, which we often feel when we're doing something new, it's like, I don't know if you watch Schitt's Creek, but it's like
Yeah.
nobody cares. Like that whole thing, like, ew, David, nobody cares. Like no one's
Yes.
paying attention to you.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that discomfort may just be living in your head, a little bit of it. But then
Mhm.
also, one of the things that I've noticed recently, because I do use AI and I have found AI to be an incredibly useful tool in some scenarios. And in other
Right.
scenarios, it makes me kind of sad. And one of the things that, as I was thinking about this and this topic rather, and AI, if you type something in, you typed a prompt and you take the first iteration of it, it's not very good. Like
It stinks.
it's
It
not
absolutely
good. And
stinks.
so as you refine it, as you think about it, but that takes time.
Right.
Miles over miles takes time. Michael Jordan spent how many hours shooting hoops side of the game? Like
Yep.
it
Yep.
just takes time. So this friction is an iterative process. And I
True.
and the discomfort is an iterative process. And
Yeah.
so I guess one of the questions too is, how do we know the difference between friction as discomfort and friction as actual, like, I don't want to use the word danger, but maybe a wall or something
Mhm.
like, you know what? We don't need to lean into this discomfort. What are maybe some of the things that you think we should be thinking about when it comes to making that discernment?
I think some of that is just our rush to get to the end of the movie, as it were. And we want to get to a place of competency
Mhm.
quickly. And sometimes, and a lot of times to get to that place of competency, it takes friction to get there.
Yeah.
And so it's not rushing through. And so much of that is having something in your toolbox that reminds you that, hey, doing something for the first time here, I know it's going to go sideways in some way. And it's like, okay, and being okay with that. And when that sideways action happens, it's like, okay, I was ready for this.
Yeah.
Knew it was going to happen. Like, okay, now we can really begin to dig into this project, this plan, the work, even the relationship,
Yeah.
where everything's good for a while until something goes bad.
Yeah.
And rather than saying that something's gone bad, we have to throw everything out now.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, we just got started here.
Yeah.
Let's be curious. What happened here?
Right.
What caused this thing to go sideways? Let's
Yeah.
discuss it. Let's figure it out and then figure out some steps forward. Now, sometimes it's like, okay, maybe we can't figure it out. Then we have to have another discussion about, okay, what are our next steps? Maybe it's getting out of job or relationship or whatever, but it's not about just the first sign of discomfort. and we're out. We're
Right.
checking out.
Right. And I think it also, and I was going to go here with this, but like, I think you also have to check in with your values. Is
Yes.
discomfort part of the process? And again, that could be very literal. Like, I finally got back to the gym this week on a lifting schedule. And it was
Okay.
one of those things where the next morning it hurt so good kind of thing,
Right.
but there was some discomfort there, right? Like I woke up and really felt where I had worked out. And that's a very physical manifestation of discomfort. But when you're looking at discomfort and you're like, okay, is this just part of the systems and structures, like you were saying, of like, do we just need to reevaluate? Do we just need to figure out, I thought we needed something here. It's actually instead of X, it's Y. Or are you feeling this friction because you are at odds with your values? And
Hmm.
I think that's a really important piece as you're thinking about this and as you're trying to determine this. Are you trying to fit and conform into places and doing things that really just don't align with who you are and what you're hoping the end goal to be? I think that's another place where again, when you lean in with that curiosity and you start looking at, well, there's nothing really wrong with this system. There's nothing really wrong with this structure. I think I'm just in the wrong job, the wrong relationship, the whatever, because there's a mismatch here, right?
There's a mismatch. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where, and again, even if you want to take it that way, you're still growing. You're learning yourself.
Right. Exactly. And I think we sort of dismiss those things as mistakes.
Hmm.
And, I had a wonderful boss years ago at the Journal who counseled us on the copy desk to make new mistakes. And if you're making the same mistake over and over again, that's a problem. And that's a signal that they need some training, or you may need to go to another department. All right. So maybe they're not mistakes if we take a step back. Maybe they're just, again, part of that iterative process where, okay, I did this thing wrong or this thing went wrong.
Yeah.
And so, how can I use that in the next steps of this job, this project, whatever, so that it doesn't become a roadblock? It becomes fuel for the gas tank as
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing, part of this too, is as you're learning from your mistakes, you have that friction, you're growing. The reality is you're going to meet friction again. Like, I think we also then forget, like we
yeah.
start to master, we get better,
Mhm.
but right around the road, like right around the curve, there's
Yeah.
more friction coming. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
not thinking that like once you've cleared that hurdle or moved past it, that it's just over now.
Right. Friction is not a bug, it's a feature.
Yes. Oh, I love that. It's not a bug, it's a feature. That's great. And one of the things that as we were preparing for this, we were thinking about like the different types of friction. So there's growth friction, there's relational friction, there's internal friction, there's misalignment friction. I think that there's different responses that you can see for each of those. Like, what do you think in your work with clients? Like, what do you see showing up the most?
I think when it comes to friction, it's identity. There's a friction, you've been in your job for years, decades. You've got your identity. You think you have your identity set. Then you get laid off. You may be forced to take another job. And it's like, oh my God, what do I do next? And that starts the friction between who I am right now and who I need to be 6 months down the road, a year down the road.
Mhm.
And that's really hard. Go from someone that I know versus someone that I don't know. And as you always, anchor into keeping your values as you are having to make shifts in identity.
Mhm.
As long as you know what your values are and you stay rooted in them, your identity can morph and change. And I think for a lot of people, that's scary. People who've worked in newsrooms for decades. They've done sales for decades. They think they don't know anything else, but maybe they do, and they're scared of that friction. And so it it's an iterative process to work through that friction and sort out, am I now if I don't have this thing?
Mhm.
And it also is very important to not do that kind of work alone.
Mhm.
We talk a lot about community and being in community with other people. You know, Years ago, when I worked with a coach on my weight, she talked about having a team around me, doctors, coaches, friends. What we have to do, especially at an advanced stage, is really hard. And having to do that alone is not good. It's just not good. And so a great way to deal with that friction is to have other people come alongside you and have your team with you to help you through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the reason why therapists have therapists, coaches have coaches. Like
Yeah.
we need to
Yes.
have directed support. And then we
Mhm.
also need to have community support around us. And I love that you mentioned that because so much of the work, even when you're supported, is individual. You're the one living with yourself all the
Mhm.
time, right? And I would say with my clients, typically there's no one catalyst, right? It's not like, oh, I lost my job or I need to pivot or that sort of thing. It's sort of this knowing. And it's almost like this
Yeah.
misalignment friction of like,
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
showing up for everybody else and I'm on year 3 of saying I'm going to do this thing and I haven't, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so what I find that's interesting is it's sort of this misalignment and almost identity friction. Like you can start getting into identity work a little bit. But as
Mhm.
we go along, part of this process is grieving. It's grieving the
Oh,
person you
yeah.
were. It's grieving the person
Yes.
you thought you were. It's letting
Yes.
go of relationships, either
Mhm.
with things like work or food or people, right? That
Mhm.
you've outgrown or that just don't serve anymore. And
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of this process. And that grief is friction.
It it feels like that grief, and I don't know if you've noticed this in your clients or not, but that grief gets short shrift,
Mm.
and it feels like it's not given its due. And it's really a part of the entire process where you grow up doing this one thing, and now I've got to let go of it. And it's like, I mean, it's a loss.
Yeah.
It's a loss of yourself. And what are the means to deal with that? And how does that friction feel? And how do you process that friction right now? Again, having people around you, friends around you, family around you, to talk about that and talk through that and support you while you're going through this grieving process is essential. It really is.
And it's a reminder that the grief can coexist with excitement. The grief can coexist with
Right.
pride.
Right.
And the
Yes.
more that you embrace that friction, the
Mhm.
more whole you are
Yeah.
in this scenario. But
Mhm.
it is something that I think we often sort of just gloss over a little bit, right? Like we do this all the time, right? As a society, it's like the overnight success is 10 years in the making. And
Yeah.
no one wants to see the part where you're crying in the shower because like you just have a moment where it's like, I just miss my friends eating donuts on Tuesday mornings like we used to, right? Like
Right. Exactly.
no, and even though like your life is transforming in this beautiful, amazing way, life is full of friction. There's the ebb and flow, the yin and yang, all
Mhm.
that stuff
Mhm.
is there is friction, there's seasons, there's cycles. But the one thing you were always in control of, you can't control when you're gonna get laid off, you can't get control when you're gonna get a flat tire, you can't
Mhm.
control when you're gonna cry in the shower spontaneously. But the one thing you do have control over is you and how you
Right.
approach it.
And how you respond to these things. And what do you have in your toolbox to help you respond to these things?
Mhm.
Different frameworks, friends, meditation, yoga, running, walking, what have you. Having these tools and processes help you come up with the best response for you, right? Understanding who you are and how you best respond to these situations is key. We all have different personalities, different ways that we respond to different stressors and different friction in our life. And so much of our work is helping people figure out what their best responses to these things are so they can show up best for themselves at the end of the day. They've got families to support, friends who love them, and helping them understand how they best respond
Mhm.
helps them in whatever their next chapter is going to be.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that if you're listening to this or watching this, just I try and point this out. You have figured it out up till now.
Mm-hmm.
You have figured it all out.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we
Yes.
figure it out better than other times.
Yep.
Sometimes we're like, oh, I wish I'd done that differently. But it doesn't detract from the fact that you have a lot of tools in your toolbox that
Yep.
you can pull from that you're
Mm-hmm.
probably not even thinking about. And something you said very recently about how after the job loss happened, you wish you had given yourself a little bit of time.
Yes.
And sitting in that discomfort, sitting in that friction, we all do that, right? Like
Mhm.
we do it for different reasons and with different things. But like sitting with that friction and sitting with that comfort, sometimes that is the work.
Yeah. That's it. It's just being with that discomfort and just giving yourself the chance to grieve
Yeah,
and giving yourself the chance to process all the emotions that you are going through.
right.
It's a great short little Zen story
Mhm.
where teachers with their students. And when a student says, if trouble comes knocking on our door, what do? We open it up and say, welcome. We're ready for these things. And it's building the tools to have confidence and in the grip of life, as David Goggins would say. We're all going to be in the grip of life at some point. How do we respond to that grip is really important.
And I think there are lots of different tools you can use to have that confidence. One of the things that helped me personally, and I say this in case it helps someone else, is when I was really working through in therapy specifically, processing grief and more like lower feelings. I got to figure out a different way to say it, but like fear, anger, sadness, grief, but specifically grief. That's really where the core of it was for me. I imagined this little cloud, like a little Pixar drawn cloud sitting next to me. And I would just hold its hand and be like, we're just here right now. And that visualization that you just gave of like, if friction in this case comes to our door, what do? We open it. We say, hey, welcome in. Like, come on in, shake its
Mhm.
hand. And
Yeah.
I say that because for me, visualization makes things so much less scary for me. And
Okay.
so when I'm thinking about, I'm going to run 10 miles this weekend, I visualize it. I have
Yeah.
a plan. I visualize it. I know that
Mhm.
on mile one, my body feels like it's never run a mile ever in its life. And that's a lie. Like, keep going.
Mhm.
Right. And at
Mhm.
mile 5, 6, like, yeah, welcome it in. It's going to come,
Mhm.
like, welcome friction, welcome discomfort. Like, here we go. We've got 4 more miles. Like, let's keep going. And so for me, that's worked really well. But whatever works for you as you go through this,
Mhm.
use it. Maybe it's journaling, maybe it's meditation, maybe it is talking to it, right?
Yes.
Like,
Right. And
and because like you said,
yeah.
this friction is part of life. It's not being a Debbie Downer. It's just part of life. It's how we grow. It's actually what makes life beautiful if you think about it in a different sort of way. But whatever works for you is what works for you.
Right. Find the best tool that helps you process what you're going through.
Mhm.
Maybe it is writing, maybe it is Zumba,
Mhm.
maybe it's cooking, whatever, what have
Zumba. I love Zumba. It's so fun.
right? And here's the thing, and that's part of it too. Even when you're going through the friction in your life, it's okay to have a little bit of fun too.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's interesting. I just spoke with a somatic practitioner recently, Pearl CC, and you can look her up on Instagram. She does a lot of this somatic work and also does substance-free raves, which is really cool.
Yeah.
One of the things, the reason I mentioned this is we store this stress in our body. And to your point, like whatever it looks like, even the act of writing, I mean, there have been studies on the reason why journaling is different than typing or doing a voice note to yourself. It is a very different physical act. You're actually making
Yeah.
some friction there, right? It's a little bit more, it takes a little bit more, but that physical release is so important. So I love the fact that you brought this up. Like that is something that's really helpful and it can be fun. It can be fun.
You know, you don't have to go out and run 200 miles like Goggins.
There might be a different issue if you do that actually, but like
maybe, but just going out for a 30-minute walk, leave your phone behind, just go out for a 30-minute walk around town, or wherever your neighborhood is, and just get back into your body. Because I think one of the things we forget is that the body holds a lot of stress and it also holds a lot of wisdom as well. And just that physical act can help us tap into that.
yeah, absolutely. And this goes into like the idea of removal and when it's important and when removal of friction is important, but then also understanding how so much of our life is built around the removal of friction. And actually what you just said about leave your phone alone, I've been thinking about this a lot, like this discomfort of silence. We have removed any sort of being with ourselves and our thoughts. And
Yeah.
so like we have instant delivery, right? Like you go on Amazon, it can be there by 5 p.m. that day. Instead of cooking for yourself, you can order online, and instead of going and picking it up, it can be delivered to you.
Yeah.
And then you can pay for the faster access, which isn't real. Allegedly,
Okay.
I don't want to get sued, but it's not real. And this like convenience is coming at a cost to our resilience,
Yes.
our ability to process things. Like I used to scroll during lunch. I loved it. And I've replaced that with reading. It has changed my focus dramatically.
Wonderful. One.
And like our ability to tolerate discomfort long enough to grow. And so, like, where do you see this playing out the most and how people are dealing with hard feelings, like whether it's at work or in relationships? Like, I know I'm just seeing, and from my clients in particular, it's just adding on and adding on. Okay, well, I'm going to get Botox and my hair is going to be done and my nails are going to be done and I'm going to get the title and I'm going to upgrade the car. It's like this performance is what I'm seeing.
A lot of that's very performative, where you're thinking that getting the house or the second house, the second car, the great vacation is going to somehow or another improve your life. And it's like and you just said it, it's performative. It's not really, because we're using the house, the car, the boat to cover up for things. And maybe it's a band-aid. I want to go back to your
Yeah.
silence for a moment. And maybe this will connect
Yeah.
where, you know, one of the very beautiful things that I love to experience is going out for a hike in the woods. Every so often, if the wind picks up, the wind comes through the trees with this beautiful sound. And for me to have gotten to the place to experience that, it took some friction to get,
Hmm.
all right. Maybe it's like I had to hike 3 or 4 miles uphill,
Both ways.
both ways. But that friction of doing the climbing, I've done some of these in the rain, to be able to experience that. You can't put a price tag on that. You can't get it delivered by Amazon. And you can't just call up an Uber and get that.
Right.
And getting that friction and not just, being there, but experiencing that and feeling that is so much more valuable than just another house, another cosmetic surgery, another boat, another vacation. And we're missing out on that friction of getting to these places and having these experiences, I think enriches our lives in a way that, another house can't do.
That silence and being with ourselves is where we meet ourselves. And you can have
Yes.
these moments of knowing, like,
Yes.
and I'm sure there's studies that have been done on this, but I find that when we're in this work, you kind of go into a meditative state in many times, and not meditative state like we think about that we see on TV or in the movies. But I was watching my daughter crochet, and I was like, wow, that's a meditation. Like, she is in this
Yes.
zone, and she'll come up with creative ideas while she's doing that.
Mhm.
And so oftentimes when we're in places of friction and we don't know what to do, and we can pause and give ourselves space,
Mm.
you do have the answers. Or you're like, shit, I really don't have the answers, and can call your friends. But you know what I mean?
Right.
You've given
Yeah.
it time. It
Yeah.
hasn't taken over
Mhm.
who you are. And so I
Mhm.
think that there's like, again, there's this physical friction that we talked about. There's this emotional friction that we experience all the time in our lives, whether it's a really dramatic thing or sort of a smaller thing. But that ability to trust yourself and to think things through, we don't
So
give
important.
ourselves the opportunity.
So important that we do be able to trust ourselves and know that we can. Because and I think a lot of people just don't have the on ramp to get there. They haven't had the friction. They haven't dealt with the friction enough to be able to trust themselves. And it's like, wait a minute, hey, yeah, I can do this.
It might be hard.
Absolutely. And that's okay. And again, as Brene Brown says, we can do hard things.
For sure.
And it's so many times it feels like we have to prove to ourselves over and over again that we can do the thing that we're scared to do.
And I think, like, if we can take this on the flip side of when it's important to actually remove that friction, right? Like, you were talking about Five Guys, and the flip side of that is I'm a big believer in throwing money at stuff when you need to, right? So, like, you know what? Maybe you're sick, maybe you've had a long day, whatever. Like, okay, order Five Guys. I'm a big believer in like harm reduction as well. And I know that sounds really dramatic, but like, we've all been there, right? Like, you're having a tough week, use the paper plates. Like, it's fine. No one's going to die.
Yes.
Just do it, right? So
Right.
I do think that there's times where you have to understand, like, okay, I can remove this friction, and that is a good thing for me. But one of the other things I was thinking in all of this is sometimes we live in the friction because it's safe, and we are
Mhm.
repeating a pattern
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
that friction because it's what we know. And even if we don't like it,
Mhm.
that's what we know for our nervous system. And the actual work of the friction is breaking that pattern.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Because we want to be in safety because we're exhausted.
Mhm.
Sometimes we're exhausted and we're tired. There is safety in not doing it, not wanting to deal with that friction. But we can't stay there forever. We can't. We need a bit of courage and bravery to be able to get out of that hole and go, okay, it's time to step out. Maybe I need some help here. So let me call a friend up. Yeah. Maybe I need to call my coach up and talk this through, or my therapist,
Mhm.
talk this through. Again, we can't do these things alone.
Right.
Can't get out of that safety mindset into that growth mindset alone. And believe it or not, there are people out there who are willing and ready to help you.
And we've talked about this a little bit before, but this idea of what got you here isn't going to get you to the next step.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so I think oftentimes, and I know I've done this because I'm like everybody who's listening, I'm human. And you start to create problems for yourself that you know how to solve. You know what I mean? Versus like, okay, wait a minute. That's actually not what's happening here. And
Mhm.
like you said, like leaning into it, leaning into that curiosity, taking a step out, asking for help, which can feel so much more dangerous than, oh, let me go back to this other thing that I know how to solve and fit in and feel cozy and be in my shell. As a turtle lover, we will have no turtle slander here, but
Okay.
like, but it feels safe, right? Like
Yeah.
instead of, and it goes back to friction will always exist, but you are the person that gets to decide how you handle it. And it's hard. Like all of this is really hard. So
Yeah.
I don't want to discredit that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's hard. It takes work, but there's something gratifying in being in the work, doing it, struggling with it,
Yeah.
and becoming a better human being.
So we talked about a lot of things, but I'm wondering if you have any last thoughts for our listeners or watchers of this. Like, what is the reframe or the question for someone who's sort of been circling the same friction for a long time and can't seem to move through it?
A guy by the name of Gil Fronsdal, who I think was at the Insight Meditation Center out in California. This is a wonderful question that he would ask. And it's very simply, what's going on here? If you're circling something, take a pause and just ask yourself, what's going on here? And is this really what I want to do? Is this
Mhm.
really where I want to be right now?
Mhm.
And I think it's that simple.
Yeah.
And you can go off in so many different directions from that one question.
And I think continuing to ask yourself, so you ask yourself, what's going on here? And you respond, what's going on here? And you respond. Like keep digging
Yes.
into it. I think
Keep
is
digging.
usually there's something about when you're circling
Mhm.
that I think it goes back to that idea of safety that like saying it out loud is too scary. So we start to build up a narrative around why we're circling it.
And pause and start seeing some threads come together. And when you do start seeing those threads come together, don't forget your community.
Yeah.
Don't forget your team. Pull somebody aside and say, hey, can we meet for a coffee one day? I need to talk to you.
Yeah,
All right. Don't
absolutely.
do this work by yourself.
It's so important. And I think I'm so glad you wrapped us back to community because it is so much internal work, but we cannot do it alone. We have to be in community. And by being in community, we have to be there for others as well. So
Yeah.
I love that. It's a great way to pull it back. And so if anybody's listening to this, like, what is one piece of friction in your life that you're going to choose to stop fighting and lean into? And just think about that. Like, what are you going to stop resisting? Stop giving friction to that friction.
Yeah.
Start leaning into the friction. Ask what's going on here. Also taking a beat and thinking about like, okay, I've done hard things in the past. Like, how do I approach this? Give yourself some time, lean into curiosity, let go of any judgment. And I think you'll be surprised, right? At like what you come up with.
Completely, and I think pleasant surprised.
Yeah, you got this. Lean into
Yeah,
friction.
definitely. Lean
Yeah,
into
get those squeaky basketball shoes out.
it.
Awesome. Richard, thank you so much. Anything we didn't cover that you want to make sure listeners hear?
No, I think we covered the waterfront for this one.
Cool.